and spill ethylene glycol, which is the toxic ingredient of what we know to be antifreeze. As we look for ways to be environmentally friendly, purposely spilling toxic fluids on the ground, all for the sake of bringing a bus back to the garage, should not be the way. Our contract states that authority should make reasonable requests for the safety and health of its employees. We believe requesting a tow truck in this matter was in fact reasonable. Therefore, I'm requesting support for tow truck so we can keep our environment safe. Finally, I'm requesting an investigation into the denial of the level 1 grievance for the same incident, as I just discussed. The shop truck is outfitted for most roll call incidents, but not all events. Furthermore, the grievance response suggests employees do not control their own safety. In contrast, our contract stipulates no employee shall be required to work in a hazardous or unsafe situation without proper safety precautions being observed. The technician observed this to be unsafe, but was requested to do so anyway. As long as employees are making reasonable requests, we believe we should get this support. Overall, this local, 18-1593, values the safety of all employees. We hope you do too. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more comments? Thank you. We will move on to our safety. Yes.
Could we ask the interim CEO to give us a report on the incident just stated by the employee?
Eric Anderson.
This is the first that I'm aware that there was a dispute.
Yes, I wasn't asking you to
investigation.
speak to it now, but
Sure, but
if
we
you
will
could
certainly follow up on
look
it.
into it and give us a report, please. Thank you.
And that would include all follow-up actions mentioned today.
Sure.
Thank you.
We'll have a report at the next meeting?
Yes.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Excuse me. So that would include the de-escalation training and the scheduling of that as well that he referenced?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, we'll follow
Yes,
up
thank
with the
you.
report as to what that will look like and when it will begin, if
Thank
it's
you.
not already in progress.
And including the streetcar as well.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Colin Malloy for Safety Management Systems update, please.
Madam Chair, Board of Directors, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Colin Malloy. I'm the Director of Safety and Security with HART. And I'm here today to speak about a new framework the FTA is putting forward called Safety Management Systems, or SMS. So how I'm going to talk about today is first I'm going to reference the statutory requirements of SMS, really giving an update of what safety management systems are, and then going down in detail at a high level, talking about what a safety management policy is, safety risk management, safety assurance, and safety promotion. And then at the end of the presentation, obviously any questions that you may have. So a little bit of background in terms of safety management systems. This is really an FTA-driven initiative that all transit agencies must adhere to. Really the background is a number of agencies such as WMATA, CTF in Chicago, had a series of very unfortunate incidents that Congress took note of and said FTA needs to look at enhancing safety throughout the transit industry. They did that through MAP 21 and the FAST Act, is that Congress took any type of transit agency that receives FTA funds that they have to revitalize and reformat their agency plans to a public transit agency safety plan. This requirement was issued through the notice of proposed rulemaking and became a final rule. And with that, agencies have to, by July 20th, 2020, have this new plan in place. So what I'm here today to do is, you'll see in our next steps towards the end of the presentation, how we're going to prepare for this July 20th. But I want to make sure that this board and this committee has a good understanding of what SMS is, and when we bring forward the plan later in the year, that you have a background in terms of what we'll be asking the board to approve later on in February or so. So a key difference for the requirement on the safety plan is that it must be signed by both the agency's accountable executive, in our case, the HART CEO, it also must be approved by the board of directors. This is a kind of systematic change that FTA put in place, and the idea is they want to enhance the safety culture and kind of get the board of directors involved as well. So later this year, or actually early 2020, we will be bringing forward the Public Transit Agency Safety Plan, and it does need to be communicated to the board, any questions you may have, and then signed off in terms of a resolution. So one of the things FTA is asking is that we get top-down leadership support from both the board of directors level and the CEO. We also work hand-in-hand with the State Safety Oversight Office, which in our case is the Florida Department of Transportation. And for multimodal agencies, such as rail, or if you have rail and bus, you have a choice of whether you can do 2 separate plans or 1 plan in unison. So what really is SMS? We hear this acronym. SMS is made up of 4 components as a whole. So one of the things that I'll talk about is safety management policy. That talks about the agency's commitment to safety. It also then talks about safety risk management, which is really how do you prioritize your risks? How are you being more proactive of identifying trends and analysis as opposed to kind of being reactive? Safety assurance incorporates what we kind of think of as a quality assurance or QA is as you put some mitigations in place, how are you verifying that those mitigations are actually working? And then finally is safety promotion, which is a larger term for how are you communicating to staff and how are you also training staff on these safety protocols. One of the things that FTA found through this rulemaking is that agencies had areas of improvement in terms of how they do outreach to frontline staff, as well as how they train some of their frontline staff. So the SMS program puts it as a core component that really makes training and communication to employees a key critical pillar of this program. So the first critical pillar is safety management policy. So the safety policy is going to, 1, for the first time require safety objectives for the agency. So we'll be putting together specific KPIs and metrics that'll help identify, what this agency views in terms of safety. There also will be an enhanced employee reporting system. FTA is asking agencies to develop a non-punitive employee reporting system, and they've kind of put teeth to that of making sure it's part of the requirement. It also, under the plan, you have to identify the accountable executive, as well as the chief safety officer for that organization, identifying which agency leadership has responsibility for which functions, and then kind of key staff that are responsible for safety. So that is all going to be wrapped up into a safety policy statement that the CEO will be signing, and we will post throughout the agency, as well as on the intranet and our SharePoint sites. The next is really that safety risk management. That's where I talked about FTA is asking transit agencies to be more proactive. Current safety programs have a tendency of being a little bit reactive. So they've looked at really a business-like approach of how do we identify trends, how do we use that data and make thoughtful decisions to help our agencies be safer for both our employees as well as the riding public. Finally, or not finally, but again, the safety assurance aspect will, again, they put a big focus on data. So if you hear me talk about data and metrics and KPIs, FTA has really pushed agencies to say, you really need to have information backing up some of your decision making. This is the first time FTA has put these hard requirements in terms of wanting the data and the trend analysis. Now, HART has kind of done this already in terms of best practices with the agency in terms of across transit, but now it's going to be specifically mentioned within our safety plans. Also, the regulation identifies what type of events will require a full type of investigation. FTA didn't really identify that prior to SMS, so there's going to be specific criteria for what type of investigation goes forward. And then again, continually monitoring safety-related information. So it really becomes this 360 view where you're always looking at safety, you're always looking at how you mitigate and verifying that those measures are working in place. Again, as well, rail and large bus agencies, which we are considered under FTA's guidelines, a large bus agency as well as a rail agency. There's also management of change. So in the case of HART, if the referendum, the surtax dollars go through, while we expand our service, we're going to need to have safety safety assessments of managing that change. So as we do additional BRT routes, as we do additional bus routes or BRT service or whatever direction the board goes in, the agency will need to provide this board as well as the CEO what safety risks could possibly be determined from this expansion, then how are you mitigating that? So they're asking us to do that in a formulaic fashion. So we're providing more data, more information to leadership and to boards such as yourself. Again, safety promotion then kind of wraps this together. So you could have a great plan, you could have all these mitigations in place, you could have all these details, but one of the things transit did not do a great job in is kind of promoting and talking to their employees about this, as well as having these non-punitive reporting systems in terms of training. So safety promotion is really training and communication. And I talk about some of the things that we'll be doing internally at HART to meet this and to assure the board that we have a timeline of how we're going to meet this requirement. So here are some of the internal outreach in terms of what the organization is doing in preparation for SMS, which I just spoke about. One of the things, we'll have a series of SMS workshops. So a little bit more expanded view of what we're providing here, but what is SMS? How does it relate to you? How does it relate to our organization? And what are the expectations of the safety management system moving forward? From January through April, we'll be having a large employee communication campaign in terms of what SMS is, how do you report something, how do you also identify a hazard, and how does the agency follow up with you in terms of what implementation we put in place to reduce that risk. We're also going to have specific training. So supervisors, HART staff, anywhere from frontline staff all the way up to the CEO, we're going to have specific training talking about what SMS is. And then as well as leveraging existing processes and procedures that we have in place. HART has a number of great policies in place. We have a number of great procedures and relationships from the different departments. So we're going to leverage things that work and then enhance things that need some improvement. And then again, FDOT is a great partner on this. We're working with FDOT in terms of what exactly they're looking for in the plan and how we meet their requirements as well as the FDA's requirements. So again, here is next steps. We wanted to provide an overview to this committee in terms of what we've done, where we're going, and how we're going to be prepared to meet that July 2020 deadline so that HART remains in compliance. So some of the things we have done is we have completed a gap analysis. So what the gap analysis did is here's this new requirement, and then here's the existing requirement. To meet that, what areas do we need to focus on and work on? That was completed. We've developed an SMS implementation team. The team is made up of staff from across the different departments. So you have members from HR, from training, from safety, from operations, from procurement, really across department approach of making SMS work. We've also developed a kind of more detailed transition plan to leadership that talks about specific milestones. And then the plan itself, which PTAS stands for Public Transit Agency Safety Plan. But we plan to have, we are currently working on the plan as we speak and having a draft completed by February. We will then come back to this committee in March with the plan and be available to kind of talk more in depth about what is in the plan and also address any questions you may have. But in March, we will be seeking your approval to approve this plan, and then we would move forward with providing it to FDOT for their oversight submittal, and we're currently on task to do that by April 2020, and that gives us a little bit of wiggle room to meet that July 2020 guideline. So that's really what I had today. This was, again, it's an overview, kind of an executive level of what SMS is. The key takeaways that we really wanted to talk to this committee is that we wanted to just give you some background of what SMS is, what SMS entails for this organization, and kind of give you a timeline of next steps, as well as when we come back in March, we wanted to make sure that we fully kind of briefed you. But I'm also available, open up to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Colin.
Thank you.
Yes,
You mentioned the participants in the SMS team, but you didn't mention maintenance. Are they part of the?
Yes, the maintenance department, and we'll be reaching out to well as our collectively bargained staff from both ATU, Teamsters. Maintenance is part of this as well. So it really is all facets. That was just a slip. I didn't say maintenance, but we're encouraging all departments to be involved. Maintenance has a huge part in this as well.
Yes, I would think. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman.
That was my
Councilman Schussler.
question. The union is involved. How many members on your entire committee?
So the new implementation team roughly has, what we stood up, has roughly about 8 members on it, and we want to have a member from both the ATU as well as Teamsters on there as well.
And they're active participants?
We have a series of safety committees. The SMS implementation team has really just kind of started in terms of this process of just this past month, we really started with the SMS implementation team. So that's a new team that just developed, and we'll still be having the first meeting in terms of how we communicate that out.
Okay, I just want to reiterate the fact that that's very critical that,
Yes, sir.
that all staff, the thing be vertically integrated through all levels of the organization.
Yes, completely
Okay,
agree.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Thanks. Commissioner Smith?
Thank you. So there's members of HR involved, representatives of HR involved in this, and is it March when we'll see the full plan and understand that the training programs for de-escalation that the gentleman mentioned in public comment, or is there something coming sooner for employee training for the de-escalation?
In terms of the de-escalation, I will get with the training department. We will make sure that that occurs and have a follow-up with you guys in terms of dates at the next meeting.
Okay.
So we'll definitely have that tackle working with our partners. As the SMS portion of it, there are specific, we want to explain non-punitive employee reporting. We want to talk about what systems that our organization has put in place. We're looking to do that between January and April in terms of rolling out it through our quarterly safety meetings that we have, where we have all our operators that come in for this training. Some of the processes we're still refining and developing. So one of the things of exactly how does an employee report a hazard in an enhanced fashion? We want to tighten that up. We want to make sure that we have it as both an open forum as well as a free employee feels empowered to report that. So we're working on developing those processes to make sure that the employees feel completely empowered to do that. And that's what we want to incorporate into the plan. So we're still working on developing those processes. We want to do it hand in hand with the entire agency. And that's when we come back in March. We'll have a fully vetted, detailed FDOT reviewed plan for this board that talks about what direction this organization is going in terms of safety.
Thank you.
Thank you. Colin, thank you for the presentation. I do have a few questions myself, and the level of importance, as you can see, we created a committee in order to respond to it. So for a couple of things I had, you talked about the employee reporting, and that will be available when the SMS system or the program is launched. What happens today? If something happens tomorrow, what is the reporting process?
So we currently have a series of employee reporting for hazards in terms of speaking to a supervisor. There is a drop box in the operator's lounge. We have a series of existing safety committees where items are brought up. One of the things in the gap analysis is that we can have a more robust system. We also found that some employees didn't feel as empowered in terms of reporting issues. So that's one of the things we wanted to tackle, is to make sure that we have a little bit of a stronger program. We currently do have, I don't want to give the impression that we do not have an employee hazard reporting system. We do. But we want to kind of go above and beyond that to make sure that the employees, I keep using this term empowered, but SMS will only work if all staff feels empowered to talk about safety issues. We've made some great steps in this past year. There are some areas of improvement, and that's why we're working on developing these new plans, these new processes, and these new systems to make sure that we really want to be best in class on this.
Thank you. Last question about investigations. You mentioned that you're going to determine what level of investigation should be followed up on or reported. Just making a recommendation that any report should be investigated. From my standpoint, it's just a recommendation.
Yes, so all of our accidents and incidents are investigated. So one of the things that FTA put is that there's specific criteria of the type and level of accident investigation. So you investigate a mirror clip. So if we have a small mirror clip, for example, we normally have a supervisor's report that kind of goes over the analysis of what occurred and, what the follow-up action is on that. But if we have a larger, to say, rail accident, there's a much higher threshold in terms of what we have to report not only to FDOT as well as to the FTA, and that could be anywhere from a 30 to 60 to 90-day report. So what FTA did is they kind of cleaned up the criteria at the national level of what triggers some of these larger investigations. And for the first time, to your point, the bus investigations will have to have a larger focus on them. So we do investigate all accidents, but they want some more robust reporting that actually talks about trends. So, a small incident that happens numerous times should be looked at just as a large accident, because you don't want that to roll into something larger.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Malloy?
I would just like to suggest that we get an interim report maybe about halfway through the plan, so that we're not just presented with a final product.
Yeah, we'll be happy to, and that was the point of this. We wanted to communicate to you what direction we're going, but we'd be happy to, under leadership, but come back with additional updates and let you know what our status is.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, we'll do that, sir.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you. Next up is a summary of our 2019 productivity and performance metrics by Chris Cochran.
Oh, yeah, that's on.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Excuse me. We're reordering the presentation, and Colin, you have another presentation, and in an effort to not go sit down and come back
Yeah.
again, we'd ask you to go ahead and get started
Yeah,
with it. Thank you.
And my apologies.
Thank
We
you.
wanted to give the board a quick update on some security measures as well that this organization is working on. This past month, we partnered with the Transportation Security Administration on what is called their SETA program, which is Security Enhancement Through Assessment. What this program does is transit agencies work hand in hand with TSA on a number of drills and activities to help increase the security posture for the organization. The first phase of it is an assessment in terms of a baseline of how the agency is doing. The second phase works on mitigation, and the third phase is a reassessment, as well as how do you build a sustainable additional security plan. So what HART did this last month that we wanted to communicate to the board is, working hand in hand with TSA, we conducted a suspicious package drill during our morning pullout. We had great participation from operations, from supervisory staff, from safety, from our security, throughout our entire organization, and the drill was a resounding success. TSA actually placed a series of unattended and suspicious packages on the bus, and the operators under the drill were, I don't want to say challenged, but we did a run-through of whether during their pre-trip they were able to spot that bag. I can tell you it was a resounding success. Our operators did extremely well. Very proud of the work they do day in and day out. And again, this is just an example of the organization working together, and we're going to continue to partner with TSA on these type of security events, looking at rail as well as mid-trip. But we wanted to communicate to this board some of the different ongoing efforts the agency is doing, not only on the safety side, but also on the security side as well.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Malloy? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
We will now move on to summary of fiscal year 2019 productivity and performance metrics by Chris Cochran.
Morning, committee members. My name's Chris Cochran, Director of Service Development. We will present to you today a summary of our fiscal year performance metrics. As you all know, every month in your board packets, we present to you a number of different key performance indicators and performance metrics as well. We have a number of sources throughout the agency that we gather all of this information from. Pretty much every department in the agency contributes to being able to put those performance metrics together. And Christina Buchanan, who is both a scheduler and a transit analyst in our service development department, is the kind of our data guru who puts all of that data together so that we can use it in a way that allows us to analyze it the best we can to bring better services to our customers and be able to present it to you in a way that best makes sense. So her being the expert thought it would be best for her to be the one to be able to present this data to you. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to her. Christina.
Good morning, committee members. Christina Buchanan, scheduler and planning analyst. As Chris mentioned, we do collect data from a variety of sources. I just wanted to give you a little overview on several of those sources. We do, we use our automated vehicle locators to calculate our on-time performance. C-Click Fix, which is primarily used by customer service, gathers the complaints, the comments, suggestions, commendations, and then they are distributed out to different entities, and they have a lot of dashboard capabilities to provide further metrics. We get direct observations from our control center, and we also have statistically random surveys that are per FTA guidelines to obtain passenger miles traveled. We collect the data to be able to perform trend analyses, key performance metrics, and board reporting that Chris was mentioning, as well as to respond to internal and external inquiries, do our grant invoicing, and then our national transit database monthly and annual reporting. So the NTD is we report that to FTA, and to give you a little bit of a background, NTD was established by Congress to gather and report information and statistics on transit systems. We are required as recipients of FTA grants to submit the data, and that performance data is how that formula funding is calculated for our grant funding. So we do provide a lot of data on a variety of departmental areas: financial, maintenance, service, which is my primary focus, as well as safety event reports. So passengers per revenue hour is the most common tool for evaluating effectiveness and efficiency of routes, as well as to benchmark our system against similar agencies. Typically the routes that have the highest passenger per revenue hour are evaluated for frequency improvements. Those that are the lowest performing are reviewed for efficiency changes, marketing campaigns, route redesign, or other operational adjustments. The charts that you see here it's our local service, and it's broken down even further into frequent, 30-minute, and 60-minute. Our frequent routes are the ones that serve densely populated urban corridors. Whereas our 30-minute ones serve still fairly highly populated urban corridors, but they also start bringing people into the urban core, while our 60-minute frequency routes are feeder. They go from the extent of the county lines into the downtown area. One important thing to note is our passenger per revenue hour for the entirety of our fixed route system was 18.57, and that is approximately 20% higher than our two closest peers, PSTA and JTA. However, if you break it down even further with this frequent 30-minute and 60-minute, our 15-minute routes actually have a passenger per revenue hour of 25. Our 30-minute have approximately 17, and our 60-minute are about 13 and a half. These are passenger per revenue hour for our express routes and our flex. Those can't be compared necessarily against the same system-wide average, because flex, if nothing else, cannot actually accommodate anywhere close to the capacity that a 40-foot bus can. And our express routes are meant for a smaller pool of patrons. For example, our two most productive routes, the 24 and 25, go from East Hillsborough, and they bring everybody they come into the urban core and then down to McDill in the morning only, and then in the evening, they bring everybody back. So it doesn't have the same ability, those express routes don't have the same ability to pick up patrons the way that traditional local service does. Moving on to our ridership performance, we are looking at a 5-year comparison starting with fiscal 15 and going through close of fiscal 19. Nationally, transit agencies were seeing a decline from 2014 to 2017 anyways. So the decrease in ridership from 15 to 17 is not surprising. What we have seen over the last year is that our ridership is either stabilizing or increasing since Mission Max implementation. So that is definitely a positive, especially if we look at our weekday express only. We saw an increase of 77% since for the first year after Mission Max, and it's almost doubled. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I just think it's important to recognize the scale of these charts between local average weekday and the express, because they're not at all in parity. Of course, the top number on the express is 2,000 and the top number on the weekday is 60,000. So I think it's real important because we're talking about the same size buses in service.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, so the scale is different since it is based on those averages, and we do have a smaller pool of routes for the express versus the local. The average weekday is local only. It does not include any express routes. But if you look at the chart at the bottom, the percent change is 77% in fiscal 18 compared to fiscal 17 for our express routes. And we did see a decrease in our local in fiscal 18, but that was to be expected. We anticipated ridership decrease after Mission Max because we were eliminating some service. So here on these charts, again, to Commissioner Kemp's point, the scale is a little bit different, but the focus is looking at the trends of the lines themselves within each graph. So we did see again that declining ridership from fiscal 15 through even into fiscal 18. Again, the shock of Mission Max. It's been taking a year or so to really begin stabilizing. But we can see that at the close of fiscal 19, we have started seeing increases, and we see that consistently on a month-to-month basis since for the entirety of fiscal 19. One of the goals of Mission Max was to be able to increase ridership by increasing availability of service on the weekends. So here we can see a chart of our total ridership, as well as the table showing the increases. This information was provided in the board packet. We did have a 4% increase in fiscal 19 over fiscal 18, which is very promising. Again, that shows that the ridership, it does appear to begin to stabilize. And then the table at the bottom provides you a comparison of close of fiscal 17 to close of fiscal 19. So again, we do still see that decline in our averages on a local weekday in those comparisons, but the express ridership is a very significant increase. Our Saturday is a solid increase as well as Sunday. And again, we had that decrease in our overall ridership, which was anticipated.
Again,
Yes, ma'am.
if I could.
Yes,
I
Commissioner
just, thank you. We're talking pre-Mission Max to post, again, 41 to 36, and a minus 12%, I know. But when we're talking about that weekday increase of service of 96%, we're only talking about 898 to 1,760. So I just think the scale, again, is so extreme on this. that's worth pointing out as you look at it.
Yes, and it does also tie into, we have our 275LX, our 360, and our 60 LXs, which do operate 7 days a week. So that ridership, these 275 and the 360 especially have been pretty successful since implementation. So that is another thing that is playing into it. So I'm going to move into streetcar ridership. Our free fares program has been wildly successful, to say the least, and those extended hours are equally so. It holds steady at about 8 or 9% consistently every month, with the exception of the handful of months where people are perhaps on vacation for spring break with their children or Christmas. So overall, it's approximately 8% of our morning ridership is approximately 8% of our total ridership. And here is a good chart to illustrate exactly how much the increase had been. We do see an increase in fiscal 18 that is likely due to the free Saturdays and 4th Friday promotions that we ran throughout that year. But even still, the free fares have nearly tripled our overall streetcar ridership. And are there any other questions?
Any questions? Thank you, Commissioner Kemp. You're recognized.
Thanks. One of the things, we are getting less, but I guess we're going to go back to getting more of this information in our monthly packets, because we had traditionally been, and I had noted that and said something in the regular meeting. But one of the stats that I think would be really important to start including is cost per ride. That's a comparison I typically see that I think is a really good measure for us to be aware of. Thanks.
Any other questions? I have a question in regards to your passenger per revenue per hour. How are we doing in comparison to our forecast? What did we say we were going to do? Because it seems to show the trend, and I understand the value of the trend. It's just in comparison to what do we expect? How do we determine our measure of success?
So that is established from our HOPS scorecard. I would have to confirm exactly how far. I know that we were breaking it down by fixed versus flex, as well as I believe Kara may have been on there as well. So I will have to confirm that, and I can send you a nice breakdown of all of that.
That'd be great in comparison to fixed, flex, all of these. I just don't have a recognition of, is 4% good or not good? Is it outstanding in comparison, and so forth? So if you could help us with that, we'd like to understand more. It's a great topic for us to understand the facts and what the data says as well. Commissioner Kemp, you're recognized.
Thank you. And just going back to the slide, it says 6 next to it. That's the express routes as compared to flex.
Mm-hmm.
And the flex is our little vans that go, and the express routes are actually buses. And I know that you talked about the big regular size buses with regular service that in some ways I consider pretty robust. And if you said that I heard you said the 275 LX you thought was very successful. Did you say the 60 LX too, or the 360?
The 360.
Okay, and the 360 and the 25 and the 24, they all go out to the Brandon, East Hillsborough area, correct? And is the 20X, that's Lutz?
Yes.
So the 275 LX is the one that goes from
Wiregrass to the airport.
Right, and it's underperforming. I don't understand the success of it, honestly, or being characterized that way, because it is underperforming like our flex vans,
The issue that we run into with routes such as the 275 they are very, very long, so it takes a long time. And so when you look at it on a numbers perspective as merely just bodies in the sea, it does have a good ridership. But because the trip itself from the revenue hours that it takes is so long, that skews that passenger per revenue hour down more. But we do know that it has very consistent and fairly loyal ridership. And it absolutely, I do think it does serve its purpose very well, which is being able to get people from Wiregrass into, on a limited stop basis, into UATC and then down to downtown as well, and to be able to make all those other connections as well as into the airport.
What would be interesting too, and informative, and I think would help, is to understand, where people are boarding it and for how long they're riding it. I know that that's not something we usually do, but, in these numbers, it doesn't look like it's a very useful way to use it. In this, since it's carrying less than flex, and it's giving pretty robust service. So I don't think that is the issue there. And I also think it would be good to see price per ride.
And perhaps just to add on to Commissioner Kemp, if we could normalize the data, and then we would be able to see the ratio across the board versus and looking at them within their own metric within itself. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much, Christina. We appreciate your presentation.
We'll provide the information on each other.
Thank you. Okay, we have another presentation on update on the streetcar tracks tie replacement project by Brian Allen.
Good morning. Ryan Allen, Director of Streetcar Operations for HART. Since the streetcar system was built in 2002, we've had no major track work done on the railroad. And there's a number of areas that are ballasted track sections that were designed that way for drainage. The drainage, because of the way it was designed, the ties have been inundated with water over years. And they've greatly reduced their normal lifespan of 20 years. So in June, the board authorized us to award a contract to R.W. Summers to do a major tie replacement on the railroad. And the work has been funded by a surface transportation grant. And what this means, what the work entails, is that when I say ballasted track section, that's what everybody would consider like what CSX runs on. Open cut, ties, ballast. The only difference is, as you can see in this picture, the picture on the right, our ballasted track section is all in concrete tubs. And to get at the ties, you have to remove the rail and then clean everything out. So it's a pretty labor-intensive process. The project, we started the project on November 4th. We're anticipating completing the project in February. During this time, the two stations, the public station and the York Street station will be closed during the week. We will be serving this with a bus bridge. You can see the route there on the right. And we will be doing regular service on the weekends and during holidays and our major events. So we're trying to minimize the impact as much as we can. As I said, we're running the bus bridge. What this looks like is that we have two streetcars running in the downtown area, one up here in Ybor between Kadrisha and the end of the track, and then we have two of the trolley buses running to make the in-between connection. All the streetcars are running on what would be their normal schedules, so the public, as they know our schedule, are not impacted. If you go downtown, those are the dates the car or the times the cars are leaving that are posted at the stations. And finally, we put out notifications to the public. We're using social media for this. Also, our motormen, the week before construction started, we're telling our regular riders during the week. And as part of this, since we're not running an extra streetcar or the fourth streetcar, we have our motormen riding the shuttle buses so that our passengers have a familiar face to see and to help them with their making the exchange. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes.
So, when did the noticing start? Because I'm hearing from some members of the public that they were surprised, you know, to find this and didn't have a lot of time to plan. It seemed like the noticing started the end of October.
It started the week before, and our motormen, I know I can speak for the motormen, they started telling everybody the week before.
Uh-huh. It just seems like a long period of time to be changing the service. It might have justified a longer lead time to really be getting the word out to make sure people weren't surprised to or counting on it. It's just a little late now, but that's a comment that I have.
I agree, and the points noted, for sure. Communication is key.
Question.
Yes.
Are the ties on the rest of the sections of the track not in need of repair? I notice you're just going from 6th Avenue to Cumberland. So are the others in good shape or?
No, we're doing tie replacement from 6th Avenue down to, Cumberland. And that's the only ballasted track sections we have on the line. All the rest of it's embedded.
Embedded, okay. So then there's no ties to be replaced, right?
Right,
Okay.
and the rail in the embedded section and everything, all the embedded track is holding up really well.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yes.
Just one more question. It seemed like there was a lot of water damage. Is there any indication that that is because of more frequent recent rain events, or do you feel like this was pretty normal lifespan for those ties? And is there any reason to think that we should be making this more resilient towards stronger rain events, more flooding? I'm not aware if these areas are particularly vulnerable to flooding, but is there anything being done differently this time around that would make them more resilient to water damage?
There's a couple things that are going on. First of all, this is a more long-range thing. These ties have been inundated for years and years. The city is making some changes to the drainage around these areas, specifically out here and along the port, to better drain the areas and to catch some of the water. We catch everything that comes down 13th Avenue here, down that grade. So it's quite a bit of water. The city is making some changes to intercept that water before it ever gets to us. And from our standpoint, we're going to do a little bit better job with ballast maintenance. But the key areas here that always receive water, as part of this work, we put in bigger ballast. When the line was originally built, it was a very small stone. I think it was for more aesthetics. We're using a number 4, which is what standard railroad ballast is, and this will cause it to drain better.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you for your presentation. I just wanted to note that you simply stated the few pages that you were going over and the actions that were taken, but they're very profound to have a number of alternatives as in trying to cover the areas back up, is my understanding, versus the work that's done through the night and then making it transparent to those during the day. So I know that comes with quite detailed interaction. So I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, we're moving on to our committee action items. The first one is Justin Loeffler.
Morning, Board. Justin Loeffler, Director of Maintenance. This action item is to authorize the interim CEO to purchase up to 16 staff support vehicles from the Florida Sheriff's Association in a not to exceed amount of $498,610.
Are these used vehicles?
What's that?
Are these used vehicles?
They'll be new vehicles.
Oh, I mean, I'm just curious, you're buying them from the Sheriff's Association.
The Florida Sheriff's Association is a contract.
Oh, okay, it's through their contract.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
got it.
Any other questions? Commissioner Smith?
And can you speak to the fuel efficiency or hybrid? Is there any effort in this purchase to upgrade us towards more fuel-efficient vehicles that, the board has been expressing concerns about that?
Absolutely, I can talk to that. So currently, we're about 32 vehicles that are past their useful life for staff support vehicles. Most of the vehicles that are on this list to replace are pickup trucks that are used for route maintenance and for maintenance. There's only 3 vehicles that are on this list so far that are for regular vehicles. And if we wanted to go to a hybrid or a battery option, it would actually cost so much more money for the infrastructure and for those type of vehicles that we would not be able to replace that many. And we're trying to update our fleet to the point where we can actually maintain the vehicles because some of these vehicles are like 20 years old. So right now, that's not one of the options that we really have available to us to be able to replace as many vehicles as possible.
If I can follow up.
Yes, please, Commissioner Smith.
We keep hearing, that it's just so much more cost effective to go with the older, more polluting, more energy inefficient technology rather than to begin upgrading. And I understand that, and I understand we're in dire, position financially now, but I would just like to express the hope that when the transit tax money begins to become a real a thing we can count on, that we would really look harder at those options.
Absolutely, and we did look at those options. Like I said, though, most of these are pickup trucks, 12 of the 15 that we've identified so far. There's no options there for anything that's more environmentally
It's coming.
friendly. Yeah, it's coming.
Yes.
Ford has a truck that's supposed to come out in the next year or 2 that's electric. But right now, we have to buy what's available for us.
Director Menchinick.
Yes, thank you, Madam. Yeah, I agree with the list, and having looked at it, until we can get an environmentally sensitive Ford F-450, it's not going to be, doesn't exist yet. So with the exception of the 3 vehicles, the Equinox, you're not going to do any better than what you're doing.
Well, for the Equinox, actually, I think we're going to go to a smaller vehicle, maybe a sedan, and that will be more fuel efficient. Most of the pickup trucks you see too have moved down in class, so they will be more fuel efficient. That's one good thing about with the new technologies is that even the lower class vehicles are able to tow and haul more than what was previous available.
And with the addition of these already, with the fact that these are already on the capital plan for the current budget, I'd like to move this forward, make a motion to move it forward.
Thank you. All in agreement? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, so passed. Justin, it appears that you are also on the list for action item C. Would you like to go ahead and talk about that, giving us an overview and make the recommendation there as well?
Sure.
Thank you.
So C is to authorize the interim CEO to enter into a MOU to participate with Hillsborough County Aviation Authority for temporary use of the HART compressed natural gas fueling facilities. And this is for in case of emergencies. So if their fueling station and their tram both go down, which is pretty unlikely, but they would have an option to fuel on our property.
Do you have any questions?
I assume they reimburse us for the cost of the
Yes,
gas?
so the way the reimbursement will work is there's a website for the actual average cost of CNG, and so that would be the retail price. So the thought process there is that they would get their things back up and running as soon as possible.
Sure. I mean, this kind of thing is a great example of agencies working together.
Partnerships, right?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wampler. The last item on the agenda is going to be represented by Scott Dreamville regarding the purchase of Chevrolet and Cutaway type vans and mobility lifts for Tampa Transportation Systems. Thank
Good
you.
morning.
Good
Scott
morning.
Kramer, Deputy Chief of Fleet Facilities. Save the best for last. So before I begin the presentation, I'd like to bring the committee up to date on the fleet status. I believe everyone is aware of the aging fleet on the fixed route side, but however, we also have a paratransit fleet that doesn't seem to get that same attention. When you think of aging fleet, you think of that big 40-foot bus. We currently have 56 paratransit and flex vans that have passed their useful life. That's 66% of that fleet. With paratransit averaging 800 trips a day, a 14% annual increase in service, allocating the $4.4 million to replacing 44 of those 56 vans would make a tremendous impact on operations and the customer experience. So in this presentation, I'll be reviewing current paratransit fleet statistics and comparisons, useful life standards, and HART's replacement plan. And at the end of the presentation, I would ask if this committee would review and advance this action item to the full Board of Directors meeting on December 2nd. So currently, we have a total of 85 vans, 73 are issued to paratransit side and 12 on the fixed route flex service. So we break down each sub-fleet here. The number in bold is the amount of vehicles in that fleet. And we also report on the average life-to-date miles. And keep in mind, this is data that we collect each month, and we report and analyze each month. On cost per mile comparison, this is life-to-date. The bars in blue represent the CNG, the orange is the unleaded fuel. And again, broken down by each sub-fleet. Miles per gallon comparison, this is for September. Again, blue is the CNG, orange is unleaded. And just to compare apples to apples, you can see the first bar at 12.4 and the third bar at 10.5. Those are MV1s. So those are sedans or small crossover vehicles. That's why you see the miles so high like that. So on July 1st, 2019, we implemented our temporary unleaded fueling station. By utilizing a $5,000 gallon backup tank for one of our generators, we were able to keep that investment just around $20,000. So average monthly use is about 15,000 gallons, and the September monthly average about $1.83. I believe October we brought that down, it was down to $1.69. We also improved on employee safety. We eliminated fueling paratransit vehicles off property at night, and monthly savings, we average service time per vehicle went from 35 minutes off property to 15 minutes on property. We saved 20 service center hours weekly, focus on other areas, and the administrative tracking of fuel usage went from 30 hours a month to 2 hours. I added a picture in there just so everyone can see what that actually looks like. It is temporary. Here is the FTA useful life standard. This is the criteria that we must keep. If any of our rolling stock is purchased with federal funding, this is the criteria. The two bottom categories is what we would use on our paratransit or non-revenue fleets. So 5 years or 150,000 miles, or 4 years or 100,000 miles. This is HART's current replacement plan. The highlighted fleets are the fleets that need replacement immediately. It's currently 56. The first column shows the model year and the year we purchased, then the replacement year, the number of vehicles we ordered or purchased, number on order, the average miles, the projected price, and the projected total. And the projected price is based on a 3.5 increase. So in summary, FY19 HART received 19 unleaded vans. Average daily range on CNG we do about 82 miles, unleaded gas about 168 miles. Currently have 56 vans, or 66% of the 85 past their useful life. Upon board approval, HART would issue a PO to replace up to 44 paratransit vehicles, bringing the fleet to 12 vehicles, or 10% past their useful life. This would keep the replacement plan on schedule, and it also would enhance the customer satisfaction and the experience. The next steps, we'll ask this committee to review this action item, authorizing the interim chief executive to purchase up to 44 Chevrolet 4500 cutaway type vans with mobility lifts from Florida Transportation Systems, and not to exceed amount of $4,425,000, and advance this item to the full HART Board of Directors at the December 2nd, 2019 meeting.
Thank you. Any questions? Commissioner Smith?
So, how do these vans compare to the current vans that they're replacing?
So the vans we're purchasing are actually the unleaded, so they'll be identical to the 2019 vans that we purchased. And through our statistics, they're doing very well. So when you buy an unleaded vehicle through Florida Transportation, you order the chassis from the OEM, so the original equipment manufacturer would be Chevrolet. So they would get the original Chevrolet engine on the chassis, and they would move it to the Paratransit vendor, who would build the actual bus. So they would be identical to what we have now.
And there's no reason to send this through to the ADA committee of HART? This comes to this Safety and Operations Committee instead?
These vehicles are ADA compliant.
Yeah, so they're just the same as
Same as what we have now.
what we had before. All right.
Thank you. I took your question down to follow up just to ensure we have the right information and process it accordingly. The ADA. Okay, Councilman Fischler.
Yes, hey Scott, what's the cycle gonna be for this? How long is it gonna take to
So
facilitate this?
If you put a PO in, it'd be about 6 to 8 months. Something like the strike could affect us, but hopefully that won't be in effect, and then 6 to 8 months from the PO, we could have a turnaround of Paratransit.
Are we gonna stagger it, or are we gonna get them all at one time?
Oh, we'll put the PO in for 44, but they're at the mercy of the OEM, so it won't be like they'll all be coming in at once. They'll be staggered.
Okay.
I'll move approve.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Move this passed. Thank you. Are there any other, any old or new business we need to discuss today? Otherwise, I'll call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I really need that.
I'm just wondering about
Oh, I know, okay, that's all right.
Really?
That's all right, no problem.
coming to this